There is so much to love about the service history, versatility and durability of the Bradley. This kit was always going to be an exciting release. It's a long video today, but stick with me because there are some absolute gems of information along the way. This really is a must for anyone wanting to build this kit or anyone interested in the Bradley. You will not be disappointed. Magic Factory is a company that is relatively new to the market but is making quite an impression with its varied range of subjects. At present, Magic Factory have produced two versions of the Bradley, the M2A4 variant and the Ukrainian M2A2 Bradly ODS, which is the kit I've been fortunate enough to take a look at for you today. First impressions of the kit are impressive. The hull and the top shell are supplied in two halves, with a lot of that hinge and bolt detail moulded into the parts. The refinement in the Bushmaster barrel and the moulding of that muzzle brake is delicate and in scale. The kit gives you the option to build the Bradley with or without the Brat armor system, of which I'll go into a little bit later, but the parts carry a good level of detail in the bolts and in the anti-slip texture in the moulding. Overall though, just looking at the sprues, there appears to be a high level of refinement in the mouldings and a thoughtful level of detail around the parts. The tracks come in a link and length style with the main top and bottom runs, and then the smaller lengths to run around the sprockets and idlers. The underside of the tracks do have a considerable amount of ejector pin marks present, so if that was something that you were concerned with, there'll be a great deal of filling and sanding required to address those. A fret with soft vinyl parts, including a nicely rendered dust cover for the gun mount, is included, as well as a number of 3D printed parts, with the main assembly being the rear basket for that turret. There are two photo etch frets in the kit, and interestingly the first fret includes a wheel mask for spraying the wheels, which I wish I had known earlier. It also includes the grills for the engine. The second fret is far more interesting though, with all the brackets and clips and tie downs. Look at the pieces floating in the fret with no connection points. What a beautiful way to present your etch. The decal sheet gives us two options for our Ukrainian Bradley. The colour scheme is included as a separate insert in the box. Finally, the instructions come in a booklet style and on the surface seem reasonably logical. But like with my other kit reviews, looking at the pieces in a box means nothing, so I set about building the kit to give you an idea of how the kit goes together and to give you the heads up of what to look out for, and there are a few things. For this video, I've called in some help with one of the personalities of the scale modelling world, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, students, we have a very special guest speaker today.
A man that needs a little introduction. He is a world-renowned modeler, author, historian, man of mystery, and I'm pleased to say a mate, and that is Sam Dwyer.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here.
Sam, you've built this kit and are far more of an authority on the Bradley than I am, so I was hoping you might be able to share some information on the Bradley as well as your experiences with the build to go through. So with the introductions done, let's get to the build. Construction begins with the swing arms and suspension arms being fitted to the hull. The Bradley uses a torsion bar suspension setup, however these arms are all set in a fixed position. That has to be the case given the tracks are the link and length style. The fit was tight and definite and should ensure the model sits level on the ground. The top run of guide wheels was also fitted at this point. The frontal armour plate must be attached before the shrouds, otherwise you will struggle to sit that in place. Hot off the heels of painting the tiger wheels all assembled, I defaulted back to my standard practice of pre-painting the wheels and tracks prior to the assembly. The wheels are mounted on toothpicks and are painted in a Russian green from the AK Real Colour range. I also like to apply my initial weathering effects in behind the running gear prior to it being attached, so those parts of the model were primed in a Mr. Surfacer black and then painted in that Russian green colour. Most of the colour will be covered and repainted, but painting this is the insurance policy whilst I had a clear access to that space. It seemed odd to me that the instructions were calling out for a Russian green colour, given it was essentially a NATO vehicle, so I asked Sam for his thoughts on this.
So they were delivered in yellow. They were painted in theatre. So they're painted at obviously workshops somewhere in Ukraine, a Ukrainian green colour.
Right.
So it's the same green as on the rebuilt T-64s that Ukraine uses. So the T-64 tank, was built in Ukraine, used by Russia and all that sort of stuff. And then when Ukraine split from Russia in the early 90s, Ukraine kept most of the T-64 tanks, and that's their in-service tank. And they started the war in 2014 with a bunch of T-64s. Huge rebuild programs for them and stuff, and they're in the same green as the Bradleys. So, and it's not the Soviet green. It's very much unique Ukrainian green.
AK Terrains paste is a water-based textured paste that I first stipple around the areas where the mud would possibly build up. The colour is close to my vision for the dark mud seen around the battlegrounds of the Ukraine, so that would be a bonus, although once dry this area would be dusted and blended, so in reality a lot of the dark colour would be covered anyway. The rubber sections and the tracks are then clipped down on the sprues with only a couple of connection points on those parts. This will allow me to pre-paint them by first spraying the rubber parts of the wheels in a dark grey, and then a mix of SMS stainless steel and Tamiya iron for the metal parts of those tracks. I'm able to confidently mix the two paints because they are both a lacquer style of paint. The steel colour will lighten the iron and hopefully give me a more metallic look to those parts. A mix of basalt grey and black grey are used to paint the rubber pads on the tracks, and just like with the lacquers, I can mix these paints together because they are both water-based acrylics. I'm not too precise with painting these pads because again, most of this detail will be lost in the subsequent steps. To help lift the grey off the track colour, a light dry brushing technique with a light grey colour was used. Futile in the scheme of things, but it helped add some interest to those pads, at least for now. Superglue is used to fit those rubber rims to the wheels because it won't melt the plastic and damage the paint like modelling cement would. Moving back to the hull, and this is where a little preparation will make a big difference when painting your model. A clear blue is used to tint the armoured glass periscopes, of which there are many. Spraying this paint will give me a better result than trying to brush paint it, hence I'm doing this now and masking those sections while the parts are on the sprues. The glass sections were masked using a combination of cut vinyl pieces and a liquid latex masking fluid. The liquid mask would help cover the spots the vinyl pieces were missing. A layer of stainless steel was then sprayed to give me my reflective surfaces, and then a dark green over the top of that. It's a time-consuming process but should present better in the long run. The periscopes are then fed through the recesses and glued in place. Sam, however, chose a different path.
And so I left all my periscopes out and painted them in, to me, a flat black, which is a water-based lacquer-y color, and then just got a wooden toothpick and scratched off the glass face of the, because it scratches off really nicely and doesn't leave a mark on the plastic. So the periscope is black, the glass face is nice and shiny, and then just stuck the periscopes up in the holes of the turret.
The two halves of the body of the Bradley could then be attached. The fit was just about perfect for pieces so large. It was then a matter of fitting all the sections of that applique armour around the body of the vehicle. Again, I'd chosen to make life hard for myself and was planning on painting the model in a digital camouflage scheme. So to aid in that application, I would be leaving off some of the tools and handles off this base build. This should help with laying the masks flat on the surface, which in turn will give me tight lines in my masking and paint work. I did, however, fit some of the etch parts at this stage, mainly in the areas that would be predominantly green, as these would be the sections that didn't require the masking. It's here we see that lovely etch set with no connection points come into play. The clips in the rear quarter require some bending. That was an easy process using a pair of flat nose pliers. I'd fit off some of the etch parts without knowing what they were actually for. However, Sam shed some light onto that detail for me.
Yep, in the instructions there are little pegs that stick up out of the hull, and it says to glue a little flat plate on top of them,
Yes.
little
Yeah.
rectangular flat plate.
I wondered what that
They're
was.
they're the spare track mounts. So so I just got a couple of the spare track links and glued them on there, and then glued the little flat plate on top of the spare track link.
I could now fit the engine grille, however this fret required to be trimmed using a sharp blade and then lightly sanded to remove any burrs. I'm using a VMS black super glue so I can see where I'm applying it over the part. I'm trying to be restrained with the amount I'm using because the glue can clog this fine mesh. The black is reasonably slow drying also, so that should give me an opportunity to ensure the part is sitting in the correct position. Once the glue had set, the mesh was battered and distressed using the tip of a paintbrush. This should help present the grille in a more battle-hardened state and make for an interesting detail on the model once it's painted. The second grille in the side is subject to the same treatment and glued in place. I can then attach the exhaust outlet to that part. An armoured skirt around the base of the turret was attached, and the maintenance hatch for the engine is clipped in place. The flap is somewhat posable, however I glued mine in place due to the fact that there is nothing inside to look at. I wasn't sure how I'd be posing the driver's hatch, so I needed to paint it just in case. Hence, I asked Sam about the colour he painted the interior of his kit.
My interior colour is Magic Factory Grey.
That's not like a seafoam sort of a... Oh, right, okay. I see what you did there.
No, I didn't paint my interior. No,
I think they're like a seafoam green or something.
Seafoam green.
Yeah.
Yes, seafoam green.
Oh man, he got me so good.
I could then feed the periscopes through the hatch and glue them in place. The tolerance on these clear parts is extremely tight, so make sure you clean the connection points well to save yourself any frustration. The driver's hatch could then be set in place. The hinge system allows for that hatch to be posable. The troop hatch at the rear of the roof is posable also. With all these posable hatches, it makes me wonder if Magic Factory actually have plans for an interior version of this vehicle. The rear flap was also clipped in place and glued shut due to the absence of any interior detail. The terrains paste I'd applied earlier had ample time to set, so I could then go back and add some dusting effects and blend the effects through the recesses of the underside. Tamiya buff was first used to soften the transitions from the dark brown paste colour and the green of the vehicle, and I'm not looking to cover this up but to blend and add variation over the surface. I'm then able to go back and reinforce some of those shadowed areas using a thinned mix of red, brown and black. I'm focusing on the deepest recesses as well as trying to create some vertical streaking. I talk a lot about insurance painting, and this is just that. This is an area that would be hard to see, but even harder to access once the running gear and the side skirts were attached. I then fit the wheels I'd pre-painted earlier. The fit was so snug that there was no need to glue them in place, and the model sat perfectly with the ground, with every wheel sitting level. The link and length tracks were then cut down and ordered into their groups as per the call out in the instructions. A length of 7 individual tracks is stacked together and a touch of Tamiya thin cement is applied through those connection points. The glue softens the plastic and it fuses it together, but it will also give me a working window where I can manipulate those parts around the drive sprockets and the idler. The top length of track must be slid in place from one end of the vehicle, and then the smaller lengths of the tracks can be connected around those wheels. I'd recommend taking your time with this step and double checking your work. Given my time again, I probably wouldn't have bothered even trying to fit that top run of tracks because it's near impossible to see on the finished model. After speaking with Sam though, it seems there is a detail missing on these pieces.
And look, you know, if you wanted to be really picky, the guide horns should be hollow as well.
Oh,
they're
is
not.
that right?
But I mean, look, you know, mud. You know, you bit of grime and grit down there, and you wouldn't know that they're, you know, not hollow. So
A VMS liquid mask was then quickly applied over the periscopes while I remembered to add that level of protection before the painting would follow. Front and rear guards were glued in place, however I did find the front ones fought me due to the angle they needed to be installed. So I clipped the guide pin and just glued them in place. The rear storage boxes are called out as being ammunition storage bins. However, Sam had some interesting information as to the use of these boxes.
but yeah, the ones on the back of the hull are for, I think one side is for rations and, you know, like sea rations. And I think originally it had the rubber repair kit for the swim bladder that you erected around the top of the hull of the Bradley. There was a big swim thing that you put up with poles and stuff, and that helped the tank float. Okay. And there's like a rubber puncture repair kit in there and that sort of stuff. And then more ammo boxes on the other side. So
time for the side skirts, and again, you need your wits about you because you need to make a choice between step 20 and step 21, although that is not entirely obvious in the instructions. I also realised at this point there were no positions noted for the placement of those BRAT modules I'd assembled earlier. Worse than that, if you'd been following the instructions by the number and fitted the lights in step 19, you'd now have an issue if you were going down the BRAT path because those lights should be sitting on top of that armour module. Certainly a trap, so beware of that assembly. The skirts were assembled as per the instructions in step 21, however I left the wire steps off to aid with the painting phase. Because I was choosing to make the version with the reactive armour, I also left off the etch clips off the sides of these skirts, but their inclusion is certainly worth a shout out because they will enhance the model greatly when building that alternative version.
you get all of the luggage tie down points in etch brass that you just bend the edges and glue straight over the bolts, which has never been included in kit form before. You've always had to go and buy Edward or Voyager etch brass as an extra on top of the cost of the kit.
Construction moves to the turret now, and the gun mount brackets are glued in place and the coaxial gun is attached to the right of it. The machine gun pivots with the main gun, so care must be taken when gluing that part. I attached the small ammo belt, however this will be impossible to see on the finished model. However, I learnt a little bit about the mechanism and how it works.
So yeah, it is designed to be seen up under the ejection chute on the front right of the turret. Is an ejection chute for the spent link for the Bushmaster gun.
Right.
The link and the cases for the 7.62 coax, whereas the actual the cases, the big 25mm cases, spit out the front of the above the main gun. There's a port, and they fire forward out of the. They haven't included it in the kit,
right.
But it fires forward onto the engine deck.
The periscopes around the commanders and gunners positions are pushed into place. Again, the tolerances are so tight that some of the masking I'd done was damaged during the handling, so that would need to be addressed prior to painting the model. It was then a matter of connecting the two halves of that turret. One of the callouts in the instructions is the fit first warning, and I'd recommend you keep an eye out for this because it's an important detail in the way the parts will fit together. It was also here I noticed there were pieces with no part numbers showing.
That the instructions didn't say, or they might have said it, but I can't read Chinese. It doesn't say use 3D printed parts.
It got me.
So I'm looking at it going, what's going on here? You know, what am I doing wrong? And then, oh, hang on, 3D printed parts. And then of course it all fits perfectly.
It was a light bulb moment, right? Those 3D printed parts are gorgeous as well, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, they really are.
Delicate the supports and everything are. Like they literally just break apart in your hand.
Yep.
A couple of holes are filled using a black super glue as well as a filling powder. The filler will help bulk the hole up and will aid in filling up those holes. The black super glue also shows you exactly where it is sitting on the part and aids in the whole sanding process. I could then attach the rest of that applique armour around the turret, as well as attach the gunner's and commander's hatch. The hatches are posable, so I would hope to be able to find a suitable figure set to use in this model. At step 29, we need to start making some choices as to whether you want to build the version with or without the armoured blocks. So what exactly is Brat armour?
It's just explosive reactive armor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brat is Bradley reactive armor tile. Yeah, that's all that Brat stands for. Yeah, and it's a steel plate, plastic explosive inside, and a couple other steel plates in it. That the explosives just bounce the steel plate off the hull and into the jet of the heat round to pre-detonate the heat round. And it's modular, so if you were to get shrapnel damage or if you were to get a hit that blows up one of the tiles, they just take away what's left and bolt a new one onto the spot where the damaged one was. So that's sometimes you do see a green tile here and there, or a yellow tile on a green vehicle where they've replaced out some of the tiles.
I will be adding it, however I want to leave it off to aid in the masking and painting phase, so I prepared the parts as best I could with the end goal in mind. I should have applied all of those etch brackets to the turret rather than some to the blocks and some to the turret. I suspect I've made it difficult to seat the blocks on the finished model, but I guess time will tell. I have a bad feeling that some of those brackets may not survive the masking that will follow. The dust shroud and 3D printed basket can all now be attached using super glue. I also wanted to highlight a couple of the parts that I won't be using on my model, so again, over to you, Sam.
Basically it's like a brush guard. So that what you would do is mount jerry cans behind there, or kit bags and stuff, and then if you're driving through the bush, the trees just rub past it and then don't pull everything off.
What that little slatted panel is on the side skirt?
It's called a CIP, and it's a combat identification panel. And effectively what it is it shows up, depending on what side the panel is showing, it'll show up white on a black vehicle or black on a white vehicle through the thermal sight of an allied vehicle. So it is basically a big "don't shoot at me" sign.
And now, so that would not be appropriate to use that on the.
Absolutely, yeah. I've not seen one on a Ukrainian tank. Yeah.
The Bradley's true killing weapon is the tow missile system that's fitted to the side of the turret. The launcher can be installed in the engaged or in the transportation position.
I know they're being used heavily in Ukraine. I know it's a very effective weapon. You know, they've got twin warheads in them now, so that they easily defeat ERA armor, so that explosive armor that's fitted to all Soviet stuff. Cool. So
And that's all guided by wires, right?
it is, yeah. Yep. So and that's why there's that hatch on the roof at the rear of the Bradley. So for the guys in the back, they pop the hatch open, they pivot the turret around a little bit, and then the launcher, they raise the gun up, and that angles the launcher down towards the guys in the back, and they just put 2 new rounds into the tube, and and away they go. Yeah, so that's how they load, and then everyone stays under armor.
The next step in the construction phase is the big box on top of the turret, and that is the gunner's sight.
On top of the dog box is a rectangular tray, and you'll see a little box sitting inside the tray. It should only be an empty box. It shouldn't be the little GPS antenna inside it. So I know that's hyper pedantic, but again, I mentioned it to Magic Factory, and they said they're going to try and include it in the next run, an empty tray rather than the GPS antenna in there. That's right. So it's a GPS antenna, and it's also a BFT tracker, or a BFT antenna. So BFT's battlefield, the Blue Force tracker. Sorry, and what that is, it's part of the network link that all American and Aussie vehicles have, so that you know on the battlefield map where your other troop vehicles are and all that sort of stuff. Obviously not fitted to Ukrainian vehicles because there's a chance they'll fall into Russian hands.
Wow.
So with that information on board, I set about designing a replacement part in Tinkercad to better replicate that section. I'll be making the file available to my Patreons to download and use for themselves for any of you who are interested. And whilst I'm on the subject, my Patreon page is now in full swing. A big thanks to my latest killer kangaroos, Scott Gentry and Eric Lind. Thank you for jumping on board, and of course, welcome to my new Wombat Warriors, CJ and Ashley and Kelly. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps me cover my costs in bringing you this content on a regular basis. Over on the page, I'm sharing regular bench updates, as well as exclusive content, question and answer sessions, and giveaways. So please be sure to check it out. I'd love to see you there.
He was a shameless self-promoter.
Another interesting detail is the 3-pronged piece at the back of that box, and I'll let Sam explain it. However, I set about replacing those molded pieces using some fine aluminium tubing.
On the box, you've got a 3-pronged part, and what that is, that's a flag holder.
Ah, okay.
So they should be drilled out, and so when they're at gunnery range, they drive along when they're at gunnery and they're not ready to fire, they have a green flag fitted in it, right?
Wow.
That signifies they haven't got real live ammo loaded. And then when they're ready to gunnery practice, they fit a red flag. And then that's when they're doing gunnery practice. So that's on all of them.
I'd pre-painted that clear part for this section in the clear blue as suggested in the instructions, but decided to remove it and replace it with a piece of holographic film that I've been experimenting with after my discussion with Sam.
But in theory, all of the periscopes and the gunner's sight should have a anti-laser coating, which is like a color shift purple sort of hue to it.
Yeah.
I'm currently looking at ways to develop this product, so stay tuned for updates on that one. The instructions also call out for an etched guard that would cover that whole section, but again, after listening to Sam, I left it off and could showcase that holographic finish perfectly and plausibly.
The edge grill was fitted over them for places like Iraq, where and to stop it getting like fragmented and that, so it's not getting frag damage from shrapnel and from rocks, from people throwing rocks at them. I left it off because all of the shots I've got with the gunner's sight open on Bradleys, there's no mesh on them.
The gunner's sight and armoured surround for the commander could be glued in place, as well as that beautifully moulded barrel for the 25mm Bushmaster.
Yeah, please do. The 25mm cannon, and that's what did it for the video of the Bradley against the T90, was that it's never going to penetrate the front hull armor, it's never going to penetrate the turret armor, but it'll destroy optics, it'll shear track, it'll be a mobility kill, it'll absolutely bewilder the crew inside the vehicle, and that's as good as anything else.
I masked the wheels and tracks to protect that foundation painting I'd done earlier and lightly dusted the model using an anti-static brush. The brush should remove any plastic shavings or particles left over the model from the build process. Once clean, the model was primed using a Mr. Surfacer 1500 straight from the can. Fast, even passes usually ensure a respectable and quick priming job with next to no cleanup. Although the Bradley is a subject that has seen many boxings from many manufacturers, there is a lot to like about this kit. The Bradley is a versatile and topical vehicle that has seen real-life combat action and has proven itself time and time again. In terms of a kit, the attention to detail is to be commended, as is the engineering of the parts and the quality of the rendering. Tolerances are tight, bordering on perfect, so cleaning your parts and seam lines is a must. Although there are a few inaccuracies for a Ukrainian Bradley, the fact of the matter is very few of us would even know, and it's only through my connection with Sam I've been able to bring you some of the intimate details of these machines. If I had to criticise something, it would be a few minor things in the instructions, but I'm led to believe Magic Factory are open to feedback and are looking to correct some of those shortcomings in future boxings. In saying that, with a little problem solving, most modelers would be able to figure out some of those confusing steps for themselves. So, what did you think about the kit, Sam?
It's a fantastic kit. I really dig it. It's for a company of their second release, it's pretty fantastic.
A big thanks to Sam for joining in and sharing his knowledge with this community. It has been invaluable, and I've certainly learnt so much about this incredible machine. You can find Sam's work on Instagram and Facebook under SD Scale Models, and I would encourage you to check him out if you haven't already. If you're wanting a little more Bradley in your life, be sure to check out Panzermeister's review of this kit also, which should be out today. Evan is always so insightful with his builds, so I'm sure he will add his unique perspective on the kit and the vehicle itself. There is a lot on my bench at the moment, so forgive me for a little back and forth. It's just the way I model, and it keeps me interested that way. I'll be developing a mask set for this Bradley and bringing you the painting and weathering video soon, so stay tuned. If I've added some value today, please remember to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page where you'll get behind the scenes access and be able to support this channel so I can keep bringing you this content on a regular basis. Remember guys, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Share it with your family, share it with your friends, and let's be proud of what we do. I'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time.
What up, Bradley?